Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. Right, we'll get into part 2, which is the continuation of May of this year. And we're going to open with a piece that we did on land space and how we waste vast amounts of it and how the clowns destroy so much of it and then rebuild the same bits. As we get crammed into tighter and tighter living spaces, like there is no space left, when there is space everywhere. And anyone who's watched the Aerial America series will see that there is vast areas of this country uninhabited that can be developed to move people away from oceans and river systems that are causing much damage to homes, businesses and lives currently. Remember, we had all the floods in May and further into the year. The days of having to live near water are now 150 years out of date. If we can build vast pipelines at vast cost to pipe bacteria poop around the country, which in and of itself is outdated technology, then we can build water pipelines that will actually serve many different purposes. So let's look at some of the reasons why we can't develop certain land. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm not espousing build on all land. Some must be kept pristine and preserve the ecology of the planet, but currently our building issues and the chaos it can cause is beyond stupid at this point. Building on barrier islands that runs all along most coastlines around America is not clever thinking. Look at Manhattan, an island that resembles a child's Lego building creation. It's utter madness. As the buildings get higher and higher, resembling a male competitive streak of my dick is bigger than yours, it's ridiculous. And yet there is a quarter to half of the other buildings in Manhattan that are not even fully occupied. And all it takes is one tsunami or one errant storm and it all gets wiped away. So who are the biggest American landowners? Well, here is a fact that will disturb and anger most of you, as well as surprise. 72% of all land in America is privately owned by the families. 72%. And the heirs to those lands are David Pingree, who owns 830,000 acres of land. By comparison, the state of Rhode Island is 900,000 acres. Then you've got Stan Kroenke, who owns 865,000 acres, which is 4.5 times the size of New York. Richard King's historic ranch, the land stretches over 6 Texas counties with over 900,000 acres of land. Henry Singleton acquired 1.1 million acres of land before his death in 1999, and in a span of 14 years he purchased 28 different ranches. The Irvings have amassed 1.2 million acres of land. The Reed family, 1.3 million acres, although they have at least been given something back, as they recently planted their 100 millionth tree on their land. Brad Kelly has accumulated 1.7 million acres in less than a decade. The Emerson family own 1.9 million acres, and number 2 is Ted Turner, who owns around 2 million acres across 7 states, which is just shy of 3 Rhode Islands. John Malone is the largest landowner in the US with 2.2 million acres of land, and like Turner is involved with the cable companies. As a comparison, the whole of London is 75,000 acres, with the City of London an extra 717 acres. And who are the world's biggest landowners? Number 1, the Queen of England. 2, King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. 3, the Pope. 4, King Mohammed of Morocco. 5, King Bhumibol, I've spelt that right, of Thailand. Sultan Qaboos of Oman. King Gyanendra of Nepal. Kidman Holdings, yes, Nicole family. King Abdullah of Jordan is at 9, and AA Company of Brisbane is 10. And then we had another school shooting, and yet again the media twisted it into something else and used it for an agenda. Essentially this is another sign of the alt media working, and this time it is the youth who are pushing our message and just don't believe what the politicians and the mainstream media are telling us, and they used it for an agenda. The very public scene of hundreds of Colorado students and their parents who walked out of a vigil that was turned into a political theatre by the Brady campaign to prevent gun violence was so embarrassing that the gun control group actually issued an apology. And before leaving the Wednesday night event, students shouted in front of journalists who the Brady campaign invited, "This is not for us, political stunt. We are people, not a statement." Now, the Brady campaign had portrayed the event as a vigil in memory of Kendrick Castillo, a student who died from gunshot wounds after he and 2 other students charged one of the attackers at Highlands Ranch in Colorado. So instead of putting together an event to bring people together to mourn the loss, no, the mainstream media stepped in, the politicians stepped in, and the gun control brought in activists and the Colorado politicians. No surprise, Democratic presidential contender Michael Bennet and also the Democratic US Representative Jason Crow to push a one-sided political agenda. That failed. Then the rumblings of impeachment started coming in, and this show decided to give Mr. Trump a bit of a heads up and asking him to fight back. You know, it's one thing doing mild tweets here and there, but there's an awful lot of evidence that is being built up. And so as the Democrats in the US Congress debated possibly impeaching Mr. Trump, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said this week in May that he is engaged in a cover-up. Oh my. Speaking to reporters after a meeting of the House Democrats on Capitol Hill, Pelosi said, "No one is above the law," oh dear, including the President of the United States, or the House Speaker, I might add. And we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up. So it went on to say that Democrats who control the House of Representatives and Trump are engaged in a high-stakes power struggle over their ability to investigate him, with the President stonewalling multiple investigations of him by congressional committees. These are the same, if you remember from last night, these are the same congressional committees who don't have access to the files because they don't have a need to know. So that's the backdrop to that. And it's all hypocrisy in its highest form. Typical agency-type tactic of accusing others of doing what they have been doing. That repeated quite often this year, did it not? Now, I could spend probably the rest of this show highlighting the cover-ups of the Democratic Party, but decided to list just a few. The Uranium One deal, Benghazi, Obama's birthplace, nationality and records, the Clinton death trail, the Clinton Foundation rogue donations, harvesting children in Haiti, Democratic groups harvesting children at the border, Biden and Munchkin fiddling with kids, Hoover abetting with Hillary skinning kids for adrenochrome. The Dems are KKK, Antifa and also Black Lives Matter. Obama sending cash to Iran. Mnuchin working for the Chinese dragons and committing treason against the country. 2 years and vast amounts of public money wasted based on a fake and fabricated document sent by the Blue Dragons and MI5 at the request of Hillary about Russian collusion. How Hillary has done deals to sell all of America's in-ground resources off in September 2016 to foreign groups, including Russian. How Mnuchin and Hillary are blocking the Manor World Holding Trust funds going to the people. How the Pelosi family will generate vast fortunes off the Green Deal. Why Mike Pence is working with the Democrats to oust Trump. Why is a bartender with no political background promoted as a paid actor into a major political role? Yes, you, AOC, you're as fake as a glass eye. The Hillary server issue and how she has control of the FBI, CIA, NSA and also the DHS. Or why Hillary via Citadel and or the Vice Group, which runs NYPD, is blocking the NYPD investigation into ritual and sacrificial abuse to children committed by her and her lesbian partner, who is also a Muslim Brotherhood agent, Hoover abetting. Or how the Dems got the highest number of females and black people into their ranks, and yet not one of them is helping the people. You want investigations and no cover-ups, Pelosi? Try and investigate all of them. Then we'll have a real story, Mrs. Pelosi. Trump then can release his tax returns and it's all transparent. Then we can lock you all up and put the people in charge of this country that has interests of the people only. Pelosi, oh dear, a national embarrassment. Facelift Central, and we got word on the wire that she's appearing in a movie shortly called Eyes Pinned Open. Next piece. The Fed notified the banks about issuing a QE, quantitative easing, which is not possible anymore, against Treasury notes. And they collected them all from the banks, and then the Fed sent them all to China. No surprise there. Yet more of our money siphoned out by these banksters. And there was a reminder to the top brass asking the question, is that not a national security issue? We're going to say that quite a lot over this year, because it doesn't appear to be. A defunct bank with no license sending our money to China. The Federal Reserve, for those new, is defunct and it has no license to operate. So let's get this right. A Langley guy who in this week in May mentioned gets 20 years for selling secrets to China, and yet a bank on our soil that has nothing to do with America can send our money to those same nasty Chinese. And what happens? Now, on the back of that deal, Mr. Munchkin negotiated a 35% loan against those notes on the promise they would get a payout on back off them from China. Guess what? They got nothing. and essentially he made a donation to keep the deep state of China going. And we asked the question, hello Mr. Trump, hello the military, hello the Pentagon, what and when are you going to act on these criminals in our midst? Also back in May, a significant shift to the planet frequency-wise was undertaken. Some of you may have felt the effects. If it works as planned, it will change things permanently and will have a profound effect. That was in May. SSP Goons, Secret Space Program, were caught drilling again into level 7 underground, into the realm of the other beings. This time in New Zealand to gain access to certain items and systems, because they're now locked out of not just the banking systems but other systems as well. Turns out for them that was a complete waste of time, as that failed as well. SSP, for those of you who are new, are anti-human organisation, and the military, like them, are now barred from going below level 6 in what was joint facilities between humans and ETs and also NTs. In May, the topic of we are in a simulation came up again, so we decided to dig into that a bit. And this is a bit like the Russian dolls. We are the one doll, but we created all the dolls inside with programs external and internal. In fact, all are internal because we allowed them to take hold on us. Clowns and their systems, programs and projects can do what they like, but we have forgotten we have our own sovereignty to uphold. Do we accept their programs? Did you evaluate it and come to a balanced choice to then make? No, we just rolled over and accepted it on many levels. We became complacent and accepting that others will look after us. Again, that's not being sovereign. Kim can declare the whole world sovereign overnight, but it won't change a damn thing. Why? Because the people haven't changed, is the simple answer. Sovereignty with no understanding or comprehension of what it means is another lazy-assed saviour program. Society is always creating labels to define themselves, when your very presence is defining, not some bloody title or label. And if people believe they're in a simulation, then in essence they are. Because as creators, we create. If you create it, it manifests as your reality. I don't believe it, and so it's not part of my reality, and subsequently I'm not in a simulation. We had a situation a long time in the past where all of humanity were put in pods, sleeping pods. Some still believe many are still in them. Now, I have seen the pods. I got in one and stepped out of it to experience what it's all about. I made the choice not to partake in that amnesic state. It's like the lie. If you repeat it often enough, it becomes the truth for many, so you manifested the illusion that the lie is the truth. But you can also manifest the truth from the lies, can you not? We have all had a family member or a friend that always focuses on themselves being sick. And what happens next? They're always sick. Are they just unlucky, or have they manifested their own sickness to play the victim game? Other people state, I have no luck, and so they get none. And these are just examples of how we all manifest our own reality, and yet don't sit down with ourselves and analyse what we're actually thinking or saying. And it is a big problem that humanity faces going forward. All that energy creating boxes, lies, illness and bad luck for ourselves can be switched into being ourselves, truth, health and luck with a simple change of our own thought processes and mindset. As for the simulation, it is your choice to believe you are in one. I choose not to be, which is why I'd travel far. If I was in a simulation, that wouldn't take place. Now, there is a situation which I've explained before of an illusion of minor holographic nature of things here. A copy of this is in the THI Facebook files. And how it was done with frequencies, you can do this yourself. Draw a normal wave line on a piece of paper starting from the bottom left and curving up. Then you draw a second wave line starting level with the top of your waves and curve it from the left down and draw a normal wave. And if you've drawn it right, it intersects in the middle of each up and down wave curve. The first wave is the organic wave. The second one is inorganic and an overlay. Now, what happens if you frequently overlay a picture? It becomes holographic in nature. Now, if you've drawn the wave correctly, you now turn your paper 90 degrees and what you will see is a series of figure eights. That is the Mobius loop we've been trapped in for 6 periods of 13,000 years. The middle of the 8th figure is our escape. It has the east and west gate, which I explained in a show in February of 2018. You may remember it by this piece. Well, you're all going to die. That piece. That's nearly 2 years ago now. Jeez. Then we did another piece in, still in May, I think, of to find out where we're all at in terms of the self, our surroundings and the collective. Have people done their shadow and inner work? Many will say yes, many will lie. Not only to others, but to themselves also. And I asked the question, do people really not step back and look at themselves and realise how lying to ourselves is beyond pointless, and it's also a bit stupid, and yet we do it all the time? That includes me. I'm no different to anybody else. The question along the journey of self-discovery is, what is the underlying issue to it? You find that and you are on your way to correcting it. The key to it all is self-healing. What? Self-healing, Thomas? You mean to say we don't need healing machines, pills, psychologists, or some new age multi-titled made-up label person to fix me? No, you don't, and that is the key. It all starts with you. Do you want to heal and fix you, or are you content hiding behind the mask and living the illusion? Except those masks just don't work like they used to. That became even more obvious as the year went on. The masks were falling rapidly as the truth waves washed over the planet in a tidal wave that just keeps rolling. Will it stop? Not this time. We demanded the truth, and the truth is what we'll get in all, at times, its brutal glory. Now, THI members were given a heads up on this in May and June, and Cosmic Voice at the time, of 2015 with regards to shadow and inner work, and late 2016 through 17 with the masks of illusion beginning to fall. 2017 was also the cut-off point for those who didn't choose to awaken to the new world and the new reality. And many people beat themselves up over this, but it's not our fault that they are not ready. It was their choice to ignore and accept a brutal, cruel, criminal-led, fraud-laden and heinous crimes world, not ours. They chose to ignore it. As always, when something profound or way outside of the box of what is considered normal, many choose to ignore it and then rush when another date looms. Not this time. We all received many calls to step up or stand up, and for the vast majority of people, they ignored it. And some will make excuses. Well, I didn't have a landline, or my mobile reception is not good in this area. Except it was not that type of call. This was the inner call. And it rang out loud and clear. Some rose to it, many didn't. A case of most have ears, but not all listen. Now, thankfully, a number did listen and began the work they were tasked to do, mostly quietly, many in the background, some up front, and some on the front line and active. Some have awoken, but there are many still unsure of their role or task. And yet certain people ask, why are they in that role and not them? Because you didn't hear the call. Or you did and wasn't sure of what to do. You never defined your own sovereignty or tasks ahead. But that's okay. So don't be too hard on yourself. The key thing is some did hear and act on the call. If not, I suspect none of us would be here now. The problem in life is bundled into a number of things that are all co-related. Apathy, limitation, victim-saviour program, non-sovereignty and no personal responsibility. Now we can reel off a range of excuses or reasonable reasons as to why those problems pervade throughout society, but ultimately the buck stops with you. There is no government executive order stating you have to be all or some of the above, unless that was sneaked into the Paris Climate Agreement as well. But there is no bill stating we should not care for each other either. And a majority of society caring or actually giving a shit will solve most of the world's problems overnight. The bigger picture problem on this planet is the lies told to all, but the lies stuck as people forgot to think critically or future think, and learned only to delve into the past and react to the now, but the past, present and future are all one and the same. 3 planes of existence with one wave undulating through all 3 layers. So technically you can be in all 3 at any given time. And I asked people not to ask me to explain that more, but to think on it themselves. That's where you get your real understanding. I had done a piece about the 3 awakenings, which was in last night's show, I think, but there's another 6 or 7 that follow that get you into full alignment of not only who and what you are, but also what you can become. Life is all about our emotional and mental states. One or the other being off will set the whole of you off and unable to gain the next level of development. Emotional states is all about reaction, and subsequently how we deal with those reactions. Anger, rage, envy, insecurity, oversensitivity, projection, upset, melancholy, anxiety, frustration are all emotional reactions we perceive are external of us. But the key is recognizing it is actually an internal aspect of us. Someone makes you angry and you rage back at them is often a common trait to undertake, and it feels better, some say, when they've done it. And whilst that may be the case in some minor cases where you've allowed yourself to hold it all in and harbour that frustration and then just let it all blab out, most of the time anger and rage is because you haven't mastered your own emotional state. This is where the 45-55 comes into view again. Being 45% calm and 55% angry is a manageable range, as it doesn't take much to recalibrate. All out ranting, face going red, frothing out of the side of the mouth, increases your blood pressure, your heart rate, and sends the body spiraling out of control and sync. No one ever won an argument by ranting in people's face. It's a loss of control, and you will get picked off by someone in control of themselves. If you did win anything by ranting, you have only achieved that by brute force, threatening and bullying behaviour. That is not winning an argument. That is losing self-control and mastery, and also a loss of respect. In overview, you won nothing, but lost much. Now, one of the biggest issues within this framework is low self-worth, something I struggled with, which leads to insecurity again, indecision, non-trust of the self. It's a key aspect, and turns many aspects of their life into envy and comparison and competitive mindsets with all those around them, which is the most destructive aspect of how and why we struggle to interact with each other. So where does it all start? Well, sometimes it is a spillover of family traits of your ancestors that has bled through into this one. But often it is your relationship to your parents and siblings that generate most poor emotional states. For some in this lifetime, it has been or is your role to correct the ills of your own bloodline. Some will have recognised that, many will not, but correcting the bloodlines of their own family has been the role of many in this time period. To start anew we have to cleanse and, more importantly, heal the past. Families have histories of generational sexual abuse or alcohol or drug abuse, aggressive behaviour patterns, violence, divorces which spill over into successive generations from one or both sides of the family. It may have been your role this lifetime to correct that. Comparative mindset starts young, comparing yourselves to your siblings and peers. Comparison in the pursuit of curiosity can be a healthy learning tool. But the pervasiveness of this throughout society, though, suggests it is far more damaging than most realise. There is barely a single object or interaction that we haven't fine-tuned our brains into making comparisons towards others with. And the most damaging aspect of it all is, most of it is done within your own circle, be it family, partners or friends. But if you're always comparing yourself to what others have done and feel bad about yourself that you haven't achieved this, that and the other, which then leads to envy, how are you ever going to recognise your own contribution to society and, more importantly, your own value and development? One person in my life has a plethora of certificates, awards, degrees and achievements, but is riddled with insecurity, lower self-worth, that the person always feels they've never done enough because their siblings did this, that or the other, when that person has achieved so much in life themselves, which should be a sense of pride. But because of the low self-worth and self-imposed comparative mindset, where they always have to feel they have to prove themselves, this then leads to a type of self-harming behaviour, self-sabotage, where they perpetuate their own narrative of I'm not good enough or as good as somebody else. Where to be recognised, they go off the path in a deliberate move which garners discontent or reaction from those around them, which that person is waiting for to then feel bad about themselves again. This is a roller coaster of an emotional and mental instability of which that wheel can be very difficult to get off. From the overview, the behaviour is bizarre, but it can be difficult to raise those types of people once they get into a lifetime rut that they are never as good as somebody else. The wheel just keeps spinning and interactions becomes much more frequent. First off, they have to recognise within and of themselves to then begin the process of the self-healing. It's not an overnight process, and it's not an easy process either. It takes hard work. But if that person can spend so much time lowering their own value, why not spend as much time lifting their own value? Now, the mental aspect can be the cause and the consequence of emotional instability, but they also work together in a constant battle, and in essence this is your left and right brain, which I'll get into later. Emotional instability can erode the mental aspect with constant battling within and of the self, which leads to apathy, lack of will, lack of fortitude, lack of integrity and a complete dereliction of who you are. And this leads to another wheel of self-perpetuating behaviour as well, because you are no longer you. You have become a mirror version of yourself, a projection, a mask of how you wish to be. But because you lack the will and fortitude to master yourself, you have become a shadow being, or multiple shadows depending on the environment and mindset you keep. Integrating those shadows is the key to mastering instability. It is not about erasing the shadow, but integrating it within you. That mirror version of you that you falsely project is how you wish to be seen. Why not work hard and become that version of you that you are falsely projecting as you, but currently isn't? Yet often is the case in victimhood mode. They are actually that person and yet don't see it in themselves. The energy people expend to become and act in alignment with the false shadow of you, again can be harnessed to become the real you. So it's not like it takes that much more life force energy to correct it. You're actually wasting more energy portraying the false you. The mental and emotional issues of trust is a big thing for many, even when just applying it to the alt media. I've lost count of how many questions I've answered, or sometimes not, of, is this person or group good, Thomas? Now often the questioner states their own doubts within the question. If you are asking me that question, you already know that person or group is not 100% for you. So why do you need me to validate it? We have a person who doesn't particularly trust this group, but trusts somebody else who joined our group this week. That person has doubts in the so-called official narrative, and I hope she learns. So, why do you need me to validate it, whether this group is good or not? What makes my opinion more important than your own? The fact that you asked the question tells you you have enough doubts. And so we end up back on the wheel again with insecurity, a lack of self-trust, and low self-worth, are we not? Now, discernment is the word often used and many struggle with. In most cases, it's not discernment that is the issue. It is a lack of self-trust. Those who master self-trust just know that answer before the question is posed. How? Why, you may ask? Because the frequency within it changes. It's like a mini alarm bell that goes off. It's called intuition, which we all have, and yet so few will use it. Many will come up with all kinds of bizarre excuses to themselves to justify themselves not listening. Well, it was just a coincidence, or deja vu, or it was the Mandela effect. No, it was you. The real you. Like I said earlier, people have ears, but don't always listen to others, or more importantly, to themselves. And again, from an overview, it's bizarre behaviour. You are given a heads up from a brief interaction of your higher self, and you ignore it. It's no wonder for the many the higher selves haven't been fully switched on, because most of us are profligate about not using it. It's like a muscle. Use it or lose it. The key to it all is healing the past and the present to allow yourselves to have a better future. And remember, you may not just be healing your own past, but also your bloodline as well. But healing requires hard work on your part. No one or thing can fix this for you. Only you can heal the you. People can guide you towards a path, but only you can walk it. In the midst of all this personal and emotional instability lies the you. But the you, in essence, is the Russian dolls. You started off with one and created copies, none of which is the original. An example of that is you will all chat in the MeWe or on the Facebook, and you'll be you because you are comfortable talking about certain topics in the MeWe chat or Facebook. And yet you, the you that goes to a family gathering, of which we just had many, given it's Christmas, are not the real you, are you? I can feel the collective head nodding to that. That's the example. Where you're comfortable in THI to discuss things, you should be comfortable to do that everywhere. Because that original, there lies the you that has achieved far more than you all give yourselves credit for. The classic example is, oh, I'm just a housewife who looks after the children. Really? You created a living being. Is that not an achievement in and of itself? Or you often hear, oh, I'm just a joiner, or I'm just a painter, or I'm just a wage clerk, without realising what they're saying or putting across. So you can only do joinery. Is that who a being that is the crown of creation should describe themselves as? Just a joiner? Indeed. The limitation of the self program runs deep in many, defining ourselves by our current job, many of which most of us don't even like doing. Well, if you don't like your job, do something you do like. But I'm just a joiner. Like that is going to appeal to a person potentially hiring you. All that is required is a bit of thought and application to change your situation. You can, in a lot of cases, do much more than you ever imagined. But it all requires the mastery of the emotional and mental state. Without these being individually corrected, your path to merging them into one becomes limited. Controlling emotions and mental states closes down the noise that reverberates through our minds and energy centres. All that noise is much of what you created to drown out the part of you that says, I need you to address this. And suddenly then you are presented with an opportunity to address it by what many think is some random event. It's not. The inner you is screaming to fix this trauma or emotional issue, and another vessel hears it and puts it and you into the arena to see if you will play or if you will run. Now, the best formula apart from meditation, which can be done to gentle musical rhythms or not, with eyes closed or open, once you have mastered the memory code of that frequency zone, the greatest thing is to do what you were created for, being creative. It is this version of humanity's greatest gift. We are better at it than any other species. And yet so often we neglect it, buying stuff instead of fixing it, getting others to do things when with a little patience, oops, I said the patience word again, and perseverance, we can do that ourselves. Values in life of being creative have plummeted on a monetary scale. And that is a deliberate ploy by the system to erode another of our abilities. Arts and crafts rendered to a level of struggling existence jobs. Music also, except for the few that sell their souls for the illusion that is fame. So that the people with creative abilities end up serving burgers at McDonald's to get by, rather than displaying their natural talents. So let's get into the myth of separation. We reinforce ourselves with word spells, left and right brain thinking. This is duality and divide and conquer again, when they are best combined into one thinking process. This then puts an end to the dueling between the two hemispheres and duality, and brings in the harmonic aspect of you, the triality. The two hemispheres, like the two eyes, only give you half of the picture. That is within the forest. When the two hemispheres work together and not dual, in comes the third aspect, the third eye, if you like, that sees through both eyes and has an overview aspect to it as well. This is really seeing things from a whole different perspective, not only on this plane of existence, but others as well. Once those three aspects are mastered and combined like a trinity, it then creates a chord to fire up the heart center of thinking. It is a heightened version of the mental and emotional states of consciousness. In comes elevated empathy, deeper understanding, wisdom, higher intuition, a broader spectrum of the senses of the five and beyond. Your understanding of life and you goes into a whole new realm. The downloads become more frequent. Who and what you are, your purpose in life becomes more defined. Everything becomes more fine-tuned as you are no longer a nest of dolls. You are your own Neo. Spirit inner and your spirit outer becomes more defined in what you wish to do, no longer operating almost as a separate entity. You and it become one. And when your abilities kick in, not only the world is open to you, but the universe. And for the higher mastery again, the multiverse and the universal tree. We need technology to travel amongst the stars. Question mark. When you really master you, you'll become to understand how ridiculous that statement is. Currently, most people are stuck in the astral layer of travel, which, although cleared in some aspects, it is not all as I understand it. Portals and wormholes are often the realms of travelling in the astral, outside of astral does not always require the use of such technology. Mastery of the self and your own consciousness allows you to travel instantaneously via the cord. Your memory code kicks in and your destination awaits you. And I ask people to try not to use the term astral travelling like it's the only place to go. It's not. That's a spellcast. And there are far more jewels and magical creations to travel to than just the astral. Astral travel is going into the dark beasties realm. So be careful about using that terminology. Word magic and contract on that level are also important. And often we are naive in what we say or mean. So no more "I'll see you in the astral later please," because you won't see me there unless direct actions are being taken, which is far less now than previous. All this beauty and wonder, magical journeys and abilities, meeting places and beings you thought were only in your imagination or in your dreams. Well, you cannot imagine something that doesn't exist. Somewhere, not in the vastness of space, because that reality of vastness is another limitation program, all designed to propagate the little you persona. That exists what your visions have shown you. Word of caution awaits those that reach these levels. It will be a massive test of your ego, because thinking and acting godlike, destroying all and sundry because you can, lording over others because you can, will cause you to fall, just like the allegory of the biblical angels fell. You are not God. You have become a higher evolved being. Higher evolved beings should not display a lack of responsibility and play dick-swinging contests. You have worked so hard to become that higher evolved being, but that does not and never will make you the God. Because that is Source, the creator of everything, of which we are all part of. In essence, we are the creators also, all coalesced in a massive dance within the spark of creativity as you become one, as one within yourself and your own divine connection to Source. So to recap, do you still want to keep your limitation, dualistic, self-loathing, self-lying, astral projecting suit? Or do you want to expand into your own Source connection and blood code? It starts with you. One simple decision changes your whole life and timeline, which is seen as a small leap for you, but is actually a giant leap for mankind. As another starts the journey to their ultimate destiny, once that decision is made, then starts the healing. It is all about the healing of your trauma and your bloodline traumas to give you and your future generations a rebirth and growth opportunity. Do you wish to float among the stars or walk through the treacle of 3D life, weighed down by your own lack of self-worth? Or become the highest evolved version of you in many millennia? Do you wish to loop around the Mobius or reach the number of completion, the figure 9? Is it a 6 or a 9? When combined, or is it both one and the same from all perspectives? As above, so below. During the love-making act, which is the male and which is the female? It matters not from high above, as it all becomes the one. Divine male and divine female, but not designed to be separate. That is more duality nonsense. Before, long in the past, they were one. If you draw a 6 and a 9 together and look at it from above, it technically becomes 0. But more importantly, the shape of an egg, the home of the ultimate rebirth and the creation of new life. The 0 shape in the egg from the overview is how it all began in the beginning. Out of nothing, 0, came the cosmic egg and the birth of all that ever was. The journey of it all starts and ends with you. We'll be back with June next, after the music break. Right, we roll into June, and there was issues over certain vaults, and we gave out a warning, and as usual, some people don't listen. And we mentioned about Solomon's Gold and other bunkers, and again, the clowns didn't listen to what we told them, and that they cannot access them without dire consequences. And Kim received a call this particular week in June in the east saying some had died or got rare virulent form of cancer or other severe maladies trying to enter the vaults. Again, hello, McFly, who warned you and you still went ahead because you think you know it all and are so much higher and above everybody else. Oops. And then I gave out this warning. Word of warning to all climbers to avoid going up mountains at this time until further notice. The planet is changing rapidly and will not be waiting for people on those places to continue the progress. Shift is happening, but no fear, please. The first week in June, Russia asked for a return of their stolen funds, and that was refused by Kim as they sent all the last batch, like Mnuchin, to China and their fake elders in deep state. And they were also promised a return on it, which again never materialised. And so Kim told Putin to go away very politely, or unpolitely, and that she was not sending any more money so that the clowns can send it to the very clowns who stole all the assets off your country to begin with. And the word was put out, Putin needs to get his act together, quit playing a puppet for the Chinese deep state and look after his own people. And you will never be king of the world or pull off your fake RV. Then we gave an update on other beings that are stationed here, and things were going extraordinarily well in the main. A greater understanding is being garnered on both sides, and the biggest development is the understanding of the need to share resources, not kill each other for them, which is a major step forward, in my opinion, towards a united universe. Now, predictably, 2 or 3 are still in the old mindset, and they will pay for not changing. Suddenly, they are a minority who are not calling the shots anymore. clowns operating on behalf of Chinese dragons have been caught against siphoning oil out of Iran for free, using all kinds of transport, planes, boats, trucks, but also including motorcyclists across the desert. And I'm not talking just a few of them either. There were hundreds of them on the video I was shown. And these motorcyclists are carrying a barrel of oil each on their bikes, and they're being paid $1 a day to do that crap. $865,000 barrels a day for deep state goons. This enterprise will stop. And it did. The rogue Chinese elements, not the Chinese government, this is the Black Dragons, Rothschilds, Rockefeller, Cheney and the North American Black Dragon leader and other rogue control system clowns, has now officially declared war on the entire planet. The Pentagon are fully aware of what is going on, following detailed interactions with them this week. Further actions are undertaken on the first Tuesday in June, or was it the second one? Second one. That has and will send shockwaves around the world, following China's deep state threats and declaring to start all-out war globally, along with their North American dragon counterparts. Actions were undertaken, big actions of defence were undertaken, big actions of countering were also undertaken, and big support in our efforts also arrived and will continue to do so until their threat is eliminated. We are not and will not mess around with you people and or beings, of that I can guarantee. We crushed your upper echelon system, and we will crush your lower minions also. We have the support and the firepower beyond your imaginations. Now, following several more misdemeanours of interference and doing dirty work for misaligned and possessed humans, further actions were taken against the demons, real term the jinns, and also one or two of the races below also who were caught doing work for the clowns. Several thousand were removed on a Monday in June, and certain conditions and actions were put in place on a time-based unfoldment and the consequences thereof should they continue to not comply under the peace treaty. Then we were told dark jinns are now under a total extinction order on this planet. They only have themselves to blame. Then there was a warning of that went out to right across and right around the world, that the Manor World Holding Trust will fade into the background. We are not that desperate to get the funds out to allow you to waste it and play ego, dragons, deep states, family and bloodline games. And the we are more important than anybody else game. You're not. Suck it up. You were used as harvesting agents and you need to get over it. We can and will walk away from the whole planet and return when sanity and common sense prevails only. If you don't believe us, just sit back and watch them. And I repeat it again, we are willing at this juncture to walk away from all interactions, calls, deals or government transfers until you all learn to get your act together. We are not wasting any more of our time on watching you all act stupid. In June, there was a major incident in America, and a post was put up about it, and it barely rendered a comment. even in alt media. And it was the most flagrant abuse of the American people that was right in your face, and hardly anyone stared on it. And therein lies a lot of our problems, a complete lack of focus or understanding of what is unfolding. So what was the major issue, some are thinking? Trump posted on 11:11 a.m. on the Saturday that Fox was running the outing of the Deep State at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that evening. Some very distinguished guests, including a Democrat, saying how the party had lost their way, was also in attendance. But by a massive coincidence, we had another major shooting event around 4 p.m. that day, which brought much TV coverage, and the broadcast was stopped. And where was the outcry? And then we left one show with a final question to ponder. If it's proven that 80 to 85% of the people are possessed, cloned or bots, and they're all non-awake, and you are asked to leave their frequency and leave them behind, including your own family and friends, connections, would you? And I asked you to think long and hard on that answer, as it's not as simple as yes or no. In June, the Treasury requested funds, as they are 38 billion in negative equity. Kim sent 40 billion on the proviso that the 2% would be paid also. Now, predictably, the clowns within the Treasury blocked it. So then Mr. Trump issued a presidential order to release the funds, including the 2%. And the blocks stayed on the funds. So Kim pulled the 40 billion back. And Mnuchin was in heated arguments with virtually every government department, all asking where the funds are. But the question remains, at which point do these people not get there is no funds in their system? The only funds is within the trust. And then we read the Cassandra letter, one of the parents of the control system, former control system, the puppets of the Draco. And there was a key line that was overlooked, and I asked people to look at this closely, including the VI versions of them, where Cassandra said, quote, "You had your chances and your perfect world, and when that wasn't enough, we were created to lead you." My response was, yes, you led Cassandra and failed in your leadership skills, and they tipped this planet into the abyss. Real leaders guide and support. You played the ego games of we're more important than everybody else. Your leadership sucked, and this is why you're no longer here. It was fine hiding in the shadows, but when the light was shone on you, possibly for the first time in history, you all ran. Leaders, my arse. Then we got a report that nearly 51 million households who don't earn enough to afford a monthly budget that includes housing, food, childcare, healthcare, transportation and a cell phone, according to a study that was released by the United Way Alice Project. Don't like those last two names. That's 43% of households in the United States, and the figure includes the 16.1 million households living in poverty, according to them. Actually, the real figure is 38 million, not 16. As well as the 34.7 million families that the United Way has dubbed ALICE, Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. This group makes less than what's needed to survive in the modern economy, they said. Alice is one of Hillary's code names and is also name of the former AI. Then we did a follow-up piece. I've got some people thinking, and some people scratching their heads, and some people banging their heads. And it said, if it is proven that 80 to 85% of the people are possessed, cloned or bots, and they're all non-awake, you are asked, would you leave their frequency and them behind, including your family, friends and connections? Would you? So we said, what is the meaning behind the question? And I described it as multi-layered. And the key was in the last line. It's not as simple an answer of yes or no. So it was put forward, are we going into a rapture style event, as mentioned in the series 4400, The Leftovers and the film The Knowing? Nobody really knows that answer, but is there evidence to suggest it's a possibility? Yes, the changes in frequency. The out-of-body experiences increase. Phase shifting in and out, glitches in front of your eyes are all events that could possibly lead to that conclusion. Should that event happen in that manner, I want to make it clear, nobody is going anywhere else. No new planet, no different 5D world, departing on ET biospheres, which from my knowledge, those biospheres that were reported in the alt media were all human harvesting plants. But the possibilities with the changes of frequency allows the probability to change what you observe, hear, feel or sense. There is a possibility that changes in frequency will lead to things disappearing from your view. You will still be in here on this world, but changes in frequency can and do alter visual effects. Think about it from your dream world effect. The place in your dream is very similar, so that you recognize where you are, but it's not all the same, is it? Things are out of place. People are in wrong places. Buildings in wrong places. And then you wake up and say, I had the weirdest dream last night. I was in such and such a city, but not with the people from that place. And then I was instantly in another place with changes of frequency. Things can phase in and phase out your perceived existence. That's got you scratching your heads again, hasn't it? Then we had more fun and games, and some people asked me why I do this with all the having no life, not being able to travel, and various other abuses thrown at you. And I said in this piece, it's clearly not for the money, as neither Kim or I have been paid to do this. What really drives me, and has done since a small child, is injustice. The desire to end as much of it as possible, as it's riddled through all aspects of our lives. And it's another wheel that more and more people have to step off and fight it. rather than spinning inside of the wheel, just complaining about it. Now, the key to it all is teaching with a base understanding, and that is what I've tried to do with my shows. Give all people a chance to learn from a base level up. You have to start at base level, as we were all blind, naive, or oblivious to the sheer depth of all that is wrong in all aspects of life. Recognising things are just not adding up in this world, and what revealed to us is wrong, is only the first step. For many, finding out governments lie and manipulate is the first base. Our members have developed enough to know governments lie and manipulate because they're told to do so. Big difference. They are told by the families and the agencies and dragon groups to lie and manipulate. And yet, as our members have found out, yet sadly those same groups are having great difficulty in believing and accepting is that they were lied to and manipulated also. Oops, shall we say. Then we had Facebook launching Libra cryptocurrency. Oh my. All those people in the alt media who said crypto was bucking the system. And I put out in this piece, I suspect we will hear more on this subject soon. And the up-and-coming Clowns in Panic show kind of shredded that into tiny pieces a bit. And stomped on it and hammered it and everything. Near 2 years after THI exposed that particular group, long before it went viral, Keith Raniere, a self-help guru accused of leading a sex cult that enslaved women, had been found guilty of all charges against him in June. Raniere, 58, was convicted by a jury after a 6-week trial in Brooklyn, New York, and he allegedly oversaw a slave and master system in his group called Nexium. He was convicted of all counts against him, including racketeering, sex trafficking and child pornography. Then in the intel piece, we put out one line. It is suspected Egyptian former leader Morsi, who had gone missing from public gaze, has been removed from public gaze because he's one of Obama's Langley 3 puppets. IBM, IB Marduk, or I was Marduk, was attempting to recreate the birth certificate mortgage program, and it's the latest version of the Hercules, Babylon, Annabelle systems. We told the people it will not work, the same as the repeated attempts to leverage in-ground assets of the world to the Shanghai Exchange. And since we had recently changed the coding language, they are trying to create a new financial system using the same enslavement birth certificate systems. Using what currency? Why, the Facebook Libra. Not quite. And then we did a long piece about student loans, and then we asked the question, why do we have student loans? And it's 1.6 trillion debt as it stands. Many will have not known this fact until it was outed in June. And it's amazing how little Americans know about their own country, of where it matters, and in particular what affects us, who, how and why this loan program was brought in. So, who initiated it? the military under the title of the 1958 National Defence Education Act. The military brought in the student loans. Still want to happy clap them at the airport? Perhaps you'll clap them even less after this next piece. As we put out, wait until people find out more about Hotel California, as it's called. Prisoners of war, or missing in action, they said, being held by the communist, Reed Zionist, Ra-based cult, Viet Cong. No, they were on American soil in an underground facility being used as lab rats by National Zionists, better known as Nazis, scientists and also other species. As the line in the song goes, you can check out, but you can never leave. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans hoping their loved ones arrive home, or they are rescued when they were already home and being used by these MK Ultra-based psychopaths. And I posed the question, don't believe me? Fine. Carry on feeding your sons and daughters into the harvesting machine then. All under what is now the frankly ridiculous conspiracy theory that they are protecting your country and its freedoms. You have no country or freedoms. It's all an illusion. Badges for killing people? I, for one, fail to see the honour in that. Honour is in saving people, not killing them. That's the difference between someone who thinks and people who just follow orders, no matter how insane they are. It is, in overview, a total abandonment of our moral duties and obligations as parents to protect your child or children, which the majority have blindly neglected due to the programming of our military. The US military is the be-all and end-all. It's not. It's a death and destruction program that harvests everything up. $889 billion a year to kill and maim people, and hardly anyone says anything. And what is worse, we the people are paying them for the privilege of using our children in that manner. It's fucking insane. United States is a corporation started by the corrupted houses in Vienna, Austria, back in the early 1800s. Check it out yourself. United States is not and never was America. Check out the Congress of Vienna, 1815. Then we had clown behaviour on the media and theatre. The paid actor who looks eerily similar to Huma Abedin, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, which stands for Agency Operated Clown, did their latest acting role of crying into an empty parking lot on camera this particular month. The parking lot is symbolic of the number of brain cells she has to me. Like I've said, politics, which means many parasites, is all theatre. Then we had the house in Malta, allegedly being sold by the Queen. Wrong. The Crown is selling it. I guess they're running out of funds. The Crown claimed ownership over all of the assets that the Queen once had. The Queen doesn't own Buckingham Palace anymore either. And the Crown give the Queen £2 million per year to keep the palace running, plus expenses for travel. So you want to know why they're struggling for funds? There's your answer. Beneath that particular house in Malta, protected by the Knights of Malta, which is a subsidiary of the Vatican Church, is the Library of Alexandria. Oops. Banks were found to be giving out credit lines to keep clowns going in late June. All banks now stopped from issuing credit lines at all whilst in negative equity. No more credit lines allowed until they bring it up to zero, which if they continue with their current mode of operation is impossible. Banks' situation now expected to get ugly, and it did. Not as ugly as we suspected, but bad enough. Then we had a raft of billionaires spouting shite, no change, no touch with reality, and also Sanders and the paid actor agency operated clown, all calling at the same time and sending a message to Mr. Trump to tax them. Does that make any sense? No. Have these people suddenly gained a conscience? Not likely. So why are they saying it? Because of the proposals put forward by the trust team to end their game of only the poorer being taxed is why. Don't think for 1 second these people suddenly gained a conscience. They have none. And it's just another of their clever plots designed to dupe the public into keeping the IRS in its present format, with the seducement of let's tax the rich. Unfortunately for them, this show sees through their illusion. Hi all and welcome back. We're going to jump into July now. And we reported on a story that we covered previously, but it became more public, which has happened a lot this year. And it was reported that Congress has known for at least a decade that child porn trading on Defence Department computers was a problem. Military again. Immigration and Custom Enforcement identified 5,200 people subscribed to websites that were known to contain child pornography during the 2008 Project Flickr investigation, including hundreds of individuals affiliated with the Defence Department. Some of them were even that stupid they used their own government email address and military post boxes to register on the offending sites. Now, worryingly, dozens of them who were on these sites also possessed some form of security clearance. And the Defence Department's network ranked 19th out of 2,891 internet service providers for peer-to-peer trading of child porn in 2018. 19th. Worse, for transferring child porn. The US Defense Department. In July, Randy Morgans did a fantastic no-holds-barred interview with Beth Martins that will have resonated with many who listened. And Randy spoke about his own trials and tribulations of overcoming personal conflicts and also attacks beyond your normal scope. The pressures of being a father, a husband, and his gender orientation, plus the general things that life throws up like finances, children, grandchildren, and fitting it all in, as time currently is being squeezed into much narrower spins. He spoke about the pressures to perform or to be available, and the thinking process of why am I doing this is always bubbling just below the surface, he said. And I concurred with that thinking also. Only today, I turned on and then there was roughly a dozen questions fired at me within the first 5 minutes. And Randy said, particularly when you observe much stupidity and ignorance born out of social media chats or pages, it is frustrating more for us when we have put so much into it. The thinking that comes into your head, and I know Randy and Alan will agree with this, is why are we putting in so much effort and energy to save people, whereby our desire to save or help is more than the person does for themselves? Why shouldn't people fight as hard to save or help themselves? Was the question asked. And it's kind of bizarre in the extreme. And Randy spoke about the varying roles and the impacts that starts to bleed through into your private life, if you have any left, and then begins to consume it in many aspects. And I know that from personal experience. Essentially, this is a 24/7 job. And we have both wondered how many consider the work involved and how it impacts our daily lives, or do we actually have a life? Randy also went on to speak of the struggles of being a male these days, in particular the white male. We are by far the most marginalised, he said, and Beth asked, what can women do to help? Well, the answer would be to stop pushing them away. Stop being intimidating. Stop basing your love on how much they earn or will spend on you. Stop putting us down. Just because men did it in the past does not mean it has to be replicated. Look at how many single females there are. Look at how many single mothers there are. The figures are staggering. And at this point it cannot be solely put down to the fact that all men are bastards and are only after one thing. The duality dance, the tags, the labels, the boxes, the roles, and the culture have all rendered the male and female into a mishmash of confusion, mistrust, distrust, fear-based and limiting. And this, as Randy says, has to be addressed by us all. Then the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, chimed in early July and said that Facebook's FB-O plan to build a digital currency called Libra cannot go forward until serious concerns are addressed. Now, they won't be. Comments that pressured the project and dented the price of the original cryptocurrency Bitcoin. And it was fairly strong comments from what is said to be the most powerful US financial regulator, underscored the growing regulatory hurdles facing the proposed cryptocurrency, which has drawn scrutiny from policymakers globally. I wonder why. And he said Libra raises many serious concerns regarding privacy, money laundering, consumer protection and financial stability. New boss, same as the old boss then. They're not concerned about money laundering when Mnuchin's sending American money to fake Chinese elders. Or Obama's sending, what was it, 1.8 billion in cash to Iran. You know, those nasty boogeymen from Iran. Then we posted this as a heads up. Janet Yellen, Michael Cohen, Chuck Schumer, Stephen Munchkin, Jared Kushner and Ivanka, Ruth Ginsburg, Kagan and Breyer, who are all judges, Stephen Miller, Rod Rosenstein, Jake Tapper. Interesting list of names, most, if not all, involved in some way to do with the Mueller investigation. But that was not why I brought up those names in this piece. Those names were listed in the Jerusalem Post in July as some of the world's top 50 Jewish people of influence. And I said there is a connection, and that is why I put it in the intel. The G20 rejected Bitcoin as the reserve currency. European Central Bank stated it's not a currency. Neither is the dollar. Well, it is, it's not real. And even the Fed rejected it. Why? Because, as I stated in the Clowns in Panic show, which we've now done, they are being cut out of the financial system for a higher end game, dominated by high end billionaires, not millionaires. And Kim reported that we can confirm that several of the former Federal Reserve board members were coming forward looking for a golden parachute, a personal payout in turn for resigning from the Fed en masse. Then we started warning about AI. Tim Nit-Gebru, a computer scientist and technical co-lead of GoOgle's ethical artificial intelligence team, has shown that facial recognition has greater difficulty differentiate between men and women, the darker their skin tone. And a woman with dark skin is much more likely to be mistaken for a man. It's not very good then, is it? And there was a quote about 130 million US adults are already in face recognition databases. She told the AI for Good Summit in, no surprise, Geneva, Switzerland. But the original data sets are mostly white and male, and so biased against darker skin types, she said. There are huge error rates by skin type and gender. So, let's look at that statement again. 130 million face recognition are in the database that are mostly male and white. But the report stated it's biased against darker skin. Really? Nice double-speak programming language that. This whole system is biased against most people regardless of colour. So why even turn it into a colour-based issue? Despite all these glitches and being biased against one or the other or not, it didn't stop those concerns stopping the tech giant Amazon selling its Rekognition FR tool to police forces right across the US. You know what happens next. People are going to be misidentified. They've already told you it doesn't work. Childhood, the period in life when others chart your life for you. Parents are there to protect and save you and guide you. Teachers corral you into learning stuff, not much of which has any real value. And adults are charting your path because you are just a child. Adulthood, the period in life when you chart your own course. You protect, save, pay for and determine your own path with your rules and conditions, not by parents or teachers. Which is it to be? What is your path? Now in age terms, you are all adults, but are you living in an adult-based life structure? It matters not which age you are. If you are allowing others to chart your life and path, you will always stay in the childhood section of life. If you are unwilling to learn anything beyond what you were taught in school or college, you will remain in a child's level of development, frightened of making your own choices, having little to no trust of others, but more importantly, yourself. Frightened of change, riddled in fear, begging for the system to look after and save you. These people are not adults. They are children who have never had the courage to develop, mired in saviour programs and stuck in a cycle of fear and insecurity. And the question was asked, which one are you? The role of the cell is often overlooked in life, seen as it's small and is not viewable or external. But cells play an important role in life, and yet is barely recognised as such. And it can be looked at as a microcosm to the macrocosm. It is how life starts, is it not? And so it should carry far more importance than it currently receives. But it can also be seen as a lesson to us all and a symbolic meaning of what is life and anti-life, what is evolution or devolution. With many people, and it became a popular programme for the Portal people this year, of playing the divide and conquer games, and some even in our own group at this time. We have a lot of fun and games with clowns around the midsummer. Whether they recognise it as such remains to be seen, depending on whether that is corrected or not. How many times have we seen something started off as a good cause, only for one or two to hijack it and then take it off on a different path? That is more about the self than the all. All too common. And it's why the elites or the elites laugh at us. These people, like Cassandra, seem to think we cannot work as a team. It's always about promoting the self, which in part is down to the programming, but indicative of a complete lack of inner work to address that programming. But life starts off with just one cell. That cell then replicates itself and becomes 2, which then becomes 4, then 8, then 16, and so on. And that is evolution and life, whereby it increases the capacity in expansion of itself. Cells don't divide themselves and become less, do they? Those that divide and conquer are in essence devolution and anti-life in a cell complex perspective, and it's something for the people to ponder on. There was lots of people going off or wanting to go off in different side ventures and side groups, and let's split this group and let's divide this and that. No, that was what that piece was referencing. Mnuchin was pushing for a 99-year renewal of the Federal Reserve in July, and no, that's not happening either. And what they were hoping was, because everything was in turmoil, we will just relent our stance over them. No, that's not happening. The Federal Reserve is spent, and everyone knows it, Mr. Mnuchin. So why have they done this? Because they all realise now they're being pushed out of their own game. This is a multi-billionaire game now, with the Draco offspawn Rothschilds pulling the strings. As I said in the Clowns in Panic show, the old guard is being dismantled by them as well. And millions of people will get cast aside, particularly in the military, the agencies and the banking circles. It's called, what do they call it? Decentralisation. All in your face. Well, they can't say we didn't warn them. Kim told them all extensively they would get swatted aside. And that's what the Libra and all the decentralisation is all about. The US military will get replaced by NATO, and they'll just drop them. The agency goons will be replaced by the private security agencies being set up currently by Robert David Steele. Open source, remember? Public intelligence. No, intelligence on the public is what that means. Then we did a piece, what is energy? And how do we view it and interpret it? It is a key thing in understanding life on a much deeper level. Too many just take it for granted, a bit like the cells piece mentioned earlier. Energy can be both positive and negative, but also neutral. And it's the neutral aspect that people need to engage. Why? Because it's not yet formed. And so can be transmuted and manifested into something more positive. A lot of the New Age shit, which is highly damaging on an energy level. Too few understand it and how it works. Grounding, crystals, stones, amulets, all riddled with energy. And yet how many stop and think, is this object laced with negative energies from the previous holders? Or the region it came from? And the answer is largely no. People assume it is great and vibrant because the marketeers who sold it to you told you so. These crystals give you this or that energy, they say. But how many crystals or stones come with a warning to clear them of the previous energy before you use them? None. And therein lies the problem. People assume they are good and ready to use because someone else with no knowledge or awareness has told them so. Now, Chloe had just done an evening with Thomas and mentioned an incident of how I had helped a member of CV with an entity that was pushing his wife over and causing all kinds of issues. And her main issue was her husband, I'm sure older members will attest to that. But in particular, this particular agent had travelled the world and had been to many of the historical sites like Chichen Itza, Tibet, and various other so-called spiritual places, and along the way collected trinkets from these various sites. And he had quite a collection in his front room, which I told him about, and he freaked out as to how I knew that. But those trinkets carried lots of negative energy and pulled in the negative spirits, although his excessive drinking habits pulled in a lot more. Because he thought that they were all from spiritual sites, he assumed the objects from there would be spiritual also. Like I have said, that New Age program did far more damage than people realise. We must never assume anything. You investigate it, explore all the possibilities of it, and then come to your own conclusions. This is what future thinking brings to the table. This is my action. Now, what are the consequences of such? Like yoga, it can be very therapeutic, but I had to make people aware of the issues surrounding it, as the so-called experts will not tell you that. It's not entirely their fault, as that info or information is rarely revealed to the public. But any pulling in or drawing off of energy has to be assessed first. And the same applies to crystals and stones, praying, tai chi, massages, healing, etc. We're not told of these things, and it has been costly, that lack of knowledge. The same applies to sexual engagement. In new relationships or one-off encounters, you are not just sleeping with one person, you are engaging the energies of who they slept with previously, unless it's over 7 years. Grounding is another thing that's overlooked. Why assume all ground is beneficial? Mother Earth is infected in various places, is she not? What if it was a form of burial ground in the past? Imagine the trauma energy surrounding it. And these things have to be considered before you engage in that practice. There's been wars all over this planet, and the soil has been poisoned with all sorts. Dark spirits, negative energy people have all trampled over it before it, have they not? And yet you assume that ground is beneficial to you. It only becomes beneficial when you prepare and create that space. And people often ask, what can I do? Do people think, well, what if I decide here on forward that every step that I make is clearing the dark energies of before? Ponder on that for a second. The answer is likely no, you haven't, because people don't think deep enough or accept the responsibility of being the change. And once you really think on a deeper level and remove the lack of belief in yourselves, there's no end to what you can do to change the world. Only your own self-imposed limitation and distraction programs stifles that. We overlook energy trails and frequency remnants far too easily, so the object of me saying this is to get people to think, not just assume. Clear your field and shield before engaging anything that draws on or engages energy. Certain events were still in July, I think, that took place in early June the 3rd, memory serves me correctly, that those that took part in it were hoping it would change things on a much grander scale than the few can imagine. Those have been hinted at in different shows, and we were hoping the culmination of those events would all converge into a complete reversal of certain aspects here and chart a new path for the organic human souls and other beings here. Now the changes were felt, and we smiled. But Kim got a message a week or so later that confirmed many things, and it was being held back for about a month for certain other things to unfold, reveal, or were operational. And this is what you will hear now. June 13th. All the timelines have now converged. This is the beginning of the new time. Pure time, unaltered by the past. Approximately 5:01 p.m. EST on that day, the convergence was complete. There will no longer be memory of the other timelines as you go forward. Changes takes place only in the present. Evil beings trapped in the dimensional planes will be absorbed by the nothing and go forth into the darkness. Your strength will come from the knowingness that this is the new dawning of a new day. This is similar to your judgment day you have in your books. Do not be surprised to see many human lives fall away. This is because they were not human souls to begin with, but merely a mirror from another plane or point in time. As each layer falls away, there will be a new sense of understanding amongst the general population of Earth. Congratulations, since the dawn of creation there has not been such unity in the oneness of all. We are proud to welcome you to the dawning of the new age, one full of possibilities of the Creator. Once again in an ever-expanding universe, no longer stifled by the darkness we have felt for eons. King Anu has passed on as a direct result of his misdeeds in this universe. Earth will no longer be plagued by this insidious race of beings. His passing would have been around 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time that particular day. The Mantid Queen has thrown down her arms, all 8 of them, in favour of a peaceful alliance with the Universal Council. You too will feel this change as the shift becomes more apparent throughout the days. As the rightful heir to the throne granted by our Creator in his infinite wisdom, the king shall not rise again, but instead a queen will take his place to ensure no more suffering for his children. This is the word of Source, the Creator of the oneness that binds us all. You will see the sword of truth cut through all that has bound us as slaves. In time, all will reveal itself unto you. Lead the charge, do not waver. We know the journey has been long, but your unwavering faith has led you and in turn us to this point. Thank you for having the faith in us. Your leadership forward will be most welcome and critical. The probationary period is over and the Council welcomes you as a full member of the Leadership Committee. Oh, we ended last night's show with a warning to Anu in May. And Anu, the Draco reptile king known as the Lord in the Bible, yes, you heard that right, never heeded that warning and was subsequently taken out permanently following a request made by us to the council. And then we got a report on a visitation. And the Draco Empire has a new leader after Anu was discarded and dealt with. The new leader is a queen and is currently displaying many characteristics of peace and harmony, which has not gone down well with the Draco minions here. It's quite different on their home world. And I said at the time, whilst we at this stage can't fully trust what she's saying, the energetics of this being is vastly different to the previous incumbent and augurs well should that stance continue. And I, for one, welcome it as an opportunity to enhance the plan I put forward 5 years ago of us all working together. Trust has to be built on both sides over time. Anu promised to help in 2015 and went the opposite way. And one hopes that she took up the suggestion I made to appoint the ambassador for her people on this planet currently as requested, and ensure the ambassador is not interfered with in any way and able to do the work unhindered by entities under the former regime. To date, that has not taken place. Now, she does have support of 75 to 80% of their homeworlds who grew tired of Anu, their family antics and wars, and wished to seek a new way based on cooperation and common goals to be achieved between the two species. She is being supported by the council, and we look forward to sharing ideas with her that, unlike ideas that were shared with Anu and promises were made and subsequently were never followed through with them, maybe this one will be able to garner a mutual trust between the two species. And my advice to her was just don't meet up with agency or military clans. Those groups are not representatives of we the people and have done far more harm than good. In fact, those people sold us out in the 1950s. Hello, Mr. Eisenhower and his offspring. We had mentioned we're not interested in fancy technology that can be weaponized like almost every previous piece of tech that was reintroduced to us. This time we want solutions to stop the fighting, harvesting and blocking the development of not only those two species but many others as well. We'll be back shortly. Hi all, and we're going to carry on into July of this year. And we had the latest instalment of the Mueller saga, now 2.5 years on, and still no mass arrests or actual evidence of all these thousands of indictments, just chatter and more chatter with zero actions of any sort of substance. The country is bankrupt and they all argue over who is more corrupt than the other. I would say the people deserve better, but the majority are either not interested or just participating in arguing over this circus act called American politics. Then Microsoft announced in the middle of July that their NASDAQ platform is now transferring to Excel. Oops. I guess their Oracle system was turned into bacon and went sizzle sizzle. There was a headline this week from the Portal People, which is the mainstream media for new listeners, was Iran, those nasty Iranians again, is squirreling away millions of barrels of oil in storage tanks in Chinese ports. Avoiding a breach, it said, of the US sanctions whilst providing its biggest buyer with a ready supply of crude to tap into if supply is disrupted or sanctions are lifted. However, Iran has continued to ship large amounts of crude oil to China, where they are being placed in bonded storage, according to people familiar with Chinese ports. This was the mainstream media spin to cover stuff that was revealed in our show, both in last night's and earlier. And it's not the first time this year that they did that, and it wasn't the last either. The tiny man and the tiny show goes far, it seems. And the background to this is you'll find that it is the Black Dragon and the Kuomintang groups and their theft out of Iran and Iraq that went to China, and also the Bush family-based refinery in Houston, Texas. That has now been blocked. So they used their propaganda to label Iran to try and convince Trump and others via John Bolton and Mike Pompeo that they must attack Iran so they can steal all the oil again. And then I gave a warning. In the near future, I suspect it will eventually break. A plethora of so-called famous people's names off the internet and out in the main public arena. Virtually every so-called star of TV or stage is involved in it. Every model agency implicated. Politicians, volumes of them in every country. The music industry, large numbers of top stars from the 1960s onwards, it seems, are all involved in pedophilia. The list will sicken many as their favourite TV stars are outed and implicated. But there is a sinister backdrop to all of this that must not go unnoticed or unrecognised. The roles of certain agencies, namely Mossad and the CIA, along with Tavistock and other so-called institutes. Is it institute or institution? Upon investigations of my own sources, those two are implicated heavily in these what I would largely describe as honeypot exercises. I refuse to believe, under normal circumstances, this level of people are involved as pedophiles. It just doesn't compute to logic, reason, or whatever. And that many of them have undergone MKUltra programming, which is the CIA mind control techniques, and then they use the Operation Mockingbird, which is a joint CIA and Mossad operation of control the media, to cover it up and honeypot people, many of whom were on drugs, funny enough supplied by the same CIA. There was a lot of political issues going on in July. And some of the solutions that I've put forward in this show have been heard at the top end, and I was asked to continue. And so we did this solutions piece. And it went to Mr. Trump. And it was suggested by this host only that we would have to close down all American borders, no one in, no one out, for a set time period whilst operations are being carried out. Cancel all global trade deals, including the stock markets, as this would prevent transfers and further looting out of the country whilst clean-up takes place. Cancel the UN, NATO and any other commissions or think tank groups operating under deceit to the public. Issue executive orders to reassemble the military, police and National Guard under America dictates, not US. Can all be done under the Emergency War Powers Act, and instruct them to go and arrest all the top-end criminals in one sweep. Send in a task force team to take over all media outlets, throw out the agency script readers and replace with people who will deliver real news and broadcasts approved by the President, with a series of shows detailing what has and is going on. Remove all corporate and conglomerate advertising off the TV to avoid further lobbying attempt takeovers. Allow total access to entrepreneur media outlets not connected to current mainstream media projects. News to not be based on propaganda or agency-backed scripts. The police to be brought back under the control of the government, not private security holders like Citadel or Vice. Take over Citadel, Vice, G4S and all the other so-called private security groups, as all work for the Rothschilds cult. An executive order to cancel operations of all troops fighting abroad, arrange their return and use them to defend America and its borders, or employ them to go after all these dark forces, people globally, on the condition other countries request help to do so, which is a must. Trust in America is in short supply. Otherwise it will look like another of the clown invasion tactics again, which we have much trust globally to regain. This would be a start. Restore the organic constitution and delete all the co-pirate versions. Restore the Bill of Rights. Delete the Patriot Act and restore an American government which we have not had since 1871. Remove all references to United States. This country is not the US. The US is a European power structure created by the dark forces. Go to all AIPAC and other Israel conducive offices, remove all people, all contents, and freeze their bank accounts or sequester those funds for the operations and close them all down. Find out who the top-end contributors were and freeze their accounts until investigations are completed. Go into the Federal Reserve building, throw them all out and take over the operations in connection with the Manor World Holding Trust. The lower-end people working in there can be used for the investigations and operations within that building. Issue a new American currency backed by the assets contained within the trust and our own borders, with no references to the United States, notes or other debt instruments to be placed on the new money. No more 10% costs per dollar, saving the country a massive amount each year. Go into the IRS building, throw out all top CEOs and management and take over their operations, implement the new tax structure already worked on and handed over previously to you to implement. Take all funds collected illegally out of the IRS and give it back to the people in the form of rebates. All new taxes will only go to America, not the Crown or other Rothschild slush fund accounts. Go into the US Treasury and the AU Treasury plus other shell treasuries and remove all top CEOs and management and take over all operations in connection with the Manor World Holding Trust. Lower end people in there can stay in their jobs and help with the investigations within the building. Eliminating several shell companies and treasuries will have a huge savings on government spending. Go into the UN building and close it down until further notice. It can be used to notify the rest of the world of what is going on with real people talking common sense, not puppets on a string repeating scripted narratives and agendas. The Manor World Holding Trust has 6 seats in the UN Council. Go into Silicon Valley, strip it all down and never allow one consortium to run that type of project with no oversight, which is an actual national security issue, and deal with the clowns connected to the CIA and NSA in that industry. Close down GoOgle and Microsoft, 2 giant clown conglomerates that has cheated, lied, spied and looted this country beyond all reason. We have other solutions to not require either of them, and they are ready to roll out also. The last 2 items will create more jobs and eliminate flagrant national security issues. Cancel all foreign aid, all grants to charities until they clean up their act also. All of them are vulture capitalists, harvesting funds off people under false pretences. Lower end people can carry on doing the real work within those organisations of helping people and animals. Currently, they are only helping themselves at the top end. How can you say you are a charity worker and claim $300,000 to $1 million a year in paychecks? No, you're just self-serving, greedy bastards, is your correct term. This will also save huge amounts of funds that can be used elsewhere for better purposes, the Clinton Foundation being a prime example of that. Go into the FBI, CIA, DHS and NSA and rout out anti-American and anti-life peoples. Scale down agencies, as most are only spying on the American public, and the NSA can be eliminated entirely as it's just a sub-office of the GCHQ and Crown operations. Staff not immersed in clown operations can be diverted into many new jobs, investigating each department for misappropriation and also clown operations. This again will save huge amounts of wasted public funds. Create a task force and go into every so-called research centre, assess all projects and experiments going on in those facilities, remove clowns weaponising anything against the public. All research for the future must be for the benefit of all people, living beings, plant life and the planet only. Eliminate permanently the rest. This will also save huge amounts of wasted public funds. We must quickly set up manufacturing and agriculture with the goal of the country becoming self-sustaining with no imports forthcoming due to the cancelled trade deals. We have much of that already to roll out. As other countries follow suit of cleaning out all of their filth, we can reintroduce trade deals, travel, currency exchanges and partnerships with those countries as appropriate. Where will those funds come from? Well, the country will have massive savings with no Federal Reserve alone, and the announcement of the elimination of their alleged debt, as it's all been paid. No interest payments per day will make a start. Great savings will be made on government spending, as each department is overhauled using the staff within those organisations. There has already been massive savings in government spending due to the blocking of over half of the funds given to the Pentagon each year that used to go out the back door. Finally, the Trust has stated it will fund this country until it becomes self-sufficient, which it is estimated to be 3 to 5 years. With the restructuring of the tax money will go to America and Americans, not the Crown and the Rothschilds. We have the assets and the wherewithal to change this country and subsequently the world towards a better path. Then Mr. Trump was complaining at this time repeatedly about biased coverage, and that hasn't changed, and fake news. And we put forward another solution. Is it not time it was addressed once and for all? We have the solutions to fix that, Mr. Trump. 1. Sue them for slander. You know their funds are dwindling. 2. Find loopholes in the 1934 Telecommunications Act. I found several in scanning that document recently. 3. Declare them as a terrorist organisation, which essentially they are under the Patriot Act, and remove their licences. 4. Ban them from all rallies and speeches. 5. It's up to the people to create a nationwide movement and never watch their channels again. And I'm sure there will be a backlash as clown operators behind the scenes will shout dictator, fascist, Nazi if he does that. Oh wait, they already do that now. So there'll be no backlash. This was from an ancient tablet. And we put a portion of it out. Bear in mind, I warned about people being on mountains earlier. And they studied why the volcanoes weren't belching the much needed atmospheric gases and thus not releasing any warmth into the atmosphere. Things were getting worse. Nibiru's problem was to be solved by getting gold to repair the atmosphere and or to blast the volcanoes with nuclear weapons, or he could decide to do nothing. Let with weapons of terror the bowels of Nibiru be cut open. Let volcanoes again erupt, he then commanded. With weapons of terror, skyborne chariots were armed with terror missiles from the sky where volcanoes struck. The mountains swayed, the valleys shuddered as great brilliances with thunder exploded. Now, this was taken from the Nibiru Anunnaki tablets of life on their planet. And it can tell us much about our own planet. 1. It was they who introduced nuclear weapons here. They who used it on their own planet to try and waken dormant volcanoes. And it seems by this that it is the volcanoes that create a planet's atmosphere, which then creates the rain. Which is correct. What one can deduce from that is as I have covered in previous shows, that the northern and southern lights are not coming from the sky sun, but the central sun in the middle of a planet, as above, so below, which heats up the inner core and drives the volcano fires. This must have been failing on the Nibiru planet for whatever reason, and so the cycle of life started to die off. Now, what I do know is the Anunnaki were stealing or taken by force what I would call the source pack out of the core of planets and the suns, and they were dying off until the technology to do that was removed from them in 2014. So what happens when the volcanoes don't go off? Well, the planet begins to shrink and shrivel up due to no expansion of the hardened rock that came out of the volcano. If a planet shrinks, it then becomes a hollowed out planetoid and subsequently resembles a moon. And we ask the question, is it possible our moon was once Nibiru? Our current moon is too large to be a natural moon, and it has a course of nature, and it as a course of nature cannot be in a fixed stationary orbit with only one side showing, which means it's a fixed satellite station only facing one way. And it's a bit like cable TV. The cable TV always faces Earth to produce the signal. It doesn't spin and go and face outer space, otherwise you would lose the signal. And this fixed stationary object in our sky is the same thing. Hollowed out planetoid. And was placed there, not crashed into the Earth, and was created out of the debris. Because if that was the case, why are the moon rock samples older than the Earth? Oops. Of course, they came here for the monatomic gold to reseed their planet's atmosphere. But it could also be the case that they mined too much gold on their own planet, given that gold is a planet's ballast, which then sent Nibiru on its elongated orbit. Perhaps there's a reason why many of our volcanoes are going off now, and why I warned to stay off mountains recently. Expansion. Timelines fixed does not mean you or we have won. Winning is not an end goal. Winning is doing the right things on a daily basis in accordance with cosmic and natural law under the Golden Rule principle. Developing the self is winning. Addressing your core issues of inner and shadow work is winning. Caring and sharing is winning. Service to others is winning. Being an example of change is winning. Overcoming fears is winning. Being yourself is also winning. Making your voice heard is winning. You are the voice. Use it. Hi all and welcome back, and we're going to jump into August now. We're going to cover a small part of September. As I've just told people on the MeWe, October alone is longer than last night's show or this show, in terms of material. So we're going to see how far we can get. Right, into August we go. Well, in August, the THI ebook finally came out with not as much fanfare as we would have liked due to certain issues arising, shall we say. But that should not be allowed to take away from all the people who had an input on that assignment in various guises, be it writing the chapter, compiling links, the artwork, the design and the layout work, all done by people who have never met each other. You know, people from all over the world coming together and working on a project and delivering something that's just a little bit special. A tiny bit, as we would say in our show. And so special thanks to those who contributed to it, like Amy, Zenja, Marcel, Jen, Michelle, John, Truce, Dennis, Jess, with other notable inputs from GU Shift, BA, Marjolaine, Michael J, and also Perla. You will all enjoy it immensely and provide further backup and insight to the work that I've put into the shows. And it's over 300 pages packed with knowledge, links, depictions and so much more. And I'm proud of all who participated in it, and it shows what can be achieved with a desire, belief and willingness to develop not only the self, and I'm sure all the individuals got much out of it and went beyond their own expectations, but as a collective also. So thanks to you all. You can all view that in the files section in Facebook and MeWe under the title Heart of the Matter. The clowns early August found out, boy did they not like this, that there are no more black screens for them to access. That's the back access point of the banking system. That was fun that week. And their back doors into mobile phones, banks, the deep web, the dark web and other backdoor services were also taken away. And then I put forward, did you know that the deep web was accessible via online banking websites? Oops. Kim was contacted early August following the black screens going down and other things that had been done by an intermediary to discuss a potential contract agreement of releasing some funds, of which this particular group said they would do, but wanted to control it. No surprise there. And the negotiations would be on their terms. All discussed without Kim's knowledge, I might add, but she was informed later. Now, following the discussion, the person offering the deal then went to London to talk with his bosses to facilitate the processing of the deal. And then we found out who the London bosses were. They are called the World Government Council, and they have ran Rusland for many, many years up until 2016 when the peace treaty was implemented. Well, the peace treaty negated and closed all non-human entities, trade deals and control, except this group, it seems, or so they thought. The World Government Council ran out of London, UK, are all reptiles. These are your dark magician beings with the black robes and red sashes, the same group that operates under the Vatican. And the message to them is, we know who and where you are, and we will act again on you all, not just the two of your group who were taken out last year. And we left them with this cryptic message. Some people sing like a canary, some take the canary out. connect Canary with the UK, and you may find a location. They promised to release $100 million for projects, but on their terms. They failed to state what their terms are, which is indicative. These types of groups operate on the premise they facilitate something and then demand in the deal favours in return. It's a bit like how magic, black or white magic works. You don't know what the favour or return is, or the cost or the price. And favours with them can involve anything, and punishable by death should you not fulfil their favour or wishes. And we gave a message to the generals globally: do not engage these beings. They are dangerous and psychopathic, but they have nothing to offer us, and we will not be negotiating with reptiles on their terms under any circumstances whatsoever. We are not interested in what they offer. We are not required to engage them in any way, shape or form. Their power and control over humanity ended in August 2016, and reptiles are no longer playing the lead role. They can go and lay an egg or suck it for all we care. But let it be known here on record, we will not be kowtowing to any reptile ever again on this planet. Any future deals with those groups will be on our terms, not theirs. And it will not be done via intermediaries, governments, generals, contractors, or any other agenda-driven groups either, just to be clear. You all know who to contact, and we will be clear in our intentions. The deals will be what is best for the species designated as the rulers of this planet, humans. Your days of looting, harvesting, consuming and killing us are over. Nice trying to send the Dorsey after us. That failed as well, and you will pay for that. And they did. The Draco Queen arrived again and appealed to the clowns following M's old programme to stop their games. And they refused, and so they have pulled all support of that group away from them. So the Draco will no longer be assisting them in their games any further. This is a massive move and is welcomed. This will leave the clowns and the other beings intent on playing, essentially swinging in the dark under their own steam, as their isolation here now increases and their control now over anything diminishes rapidly. The media merry-go-round. I was trying to find detailed information on who owns mobile phone companies, and it was like trying to plait custard. All too familiar, as these groups hide behind shell corporations so the public doesn't find out who is who. Verizon is 45% British owned, and then comes under Bell, which is supposed to have not operated for many decades, and yet Verizon and AT&T both have Bell as their part owners. Bell is OSS. And the reason being for this is that Bell AT&T comes under Military Contractors Rule under the 1934 Telecommunications Act. In fact, the US military owns and controls all airways frequencies, including cable. In fact, all forms of communications run through the US military. Trump can stop this. There's a number of loopholes. I read the whole document. There's a number of loopholes that can end that nonsense. Spectrum, of course, is the latest big player, having bought out Time Warner Cable and Bright House under Charter Communications, who went and filed bankruptcy in 2009 and yet still remain a big player. In 2018, SoftBank, who mainly owns Sprint, now own 5% of Charter as well. SoftBank are a Japanese company. And the question that we posed that night and remains, with 5G rolling out, is it not necessarily the frequencies that are of concern, but the fact our main suppliers in these fields of all communications are all non-American? And is that not a question of national security? And why is the US military still controlling all of our frequencies and bandwidths? All banks in and beyond are beyond dire straits now. The Treasury is in negative liquidity. That got worse. China only had 300 million left. It's now less. And we warned several times it's all about to collapse. Hardly any money transactions are moving now behind minor amounts. Larger amounts, not so. Banks are frightened to release larger amounts as they will run out entirely. Citibank has been stealing from customer accounts and sending it to Shanghai on the promise of the now, quite frankly, ridiculous notion that they will be paid out by the RV. McFly, despite it failing for the past 12 years. They seem to be experts in failure. As predictable as night follows day in their world, and the Clinton death trail rolls on, even when people are in prison, it seems. Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced millionaire who was facing federal sex trafficking charges, died by suicide, or is it Arkansas, early Saturday in August in his lower Manhattan prison cell. Now, according to the Portal people, Epstein hung himself, and the law enforcement confirmed it. Well, they would. They're all run by the same corporation, is why. But one has to argue, why was he in prison in New York, given most of the perpetrators are from there also? Plus the fact that the NYPD is run by Citadel Vice, which is like the enforcement arm of the Clinton Foundation. And that story rolls on. And then we exposed Walmart. In the hour that it takes a new Walmart employee to earn the $11 an hour starting wage, the family that owns the retail giant has banked $4 million. In fact, the third generation heirs of Walmart founder Sam Walton have amassed a $191 billion fortune to top Bloomberg's list of the richest families in the world. And that has grown by $39 billion since the Waltons topped the list last year. $39 billion profit in a year. The report reveals that the Walton fortune increases by an eye-watering $70,000 per minute, $4 million per hour, or $100 million per day. I guess they need a lesson from the People's Club of need, not greed. Now, following recent claims of violence between races in America in August, I decided to go and fact check for myself. and it was not an easy task, as figures are in part missing on almost every site I went on. Given that the Portal people and GoOgle and their algorithms are running programs of divide and conquer, is why. Now the graph outlines three different groups: white, black and Hispanic. White crimes against other people brought up figures of 82.4% crimes of white people was against their own colour. 84% of white crime was against their own, 82%, was against their own colour. 7.8 against Hispanics and 3.6 against blacks. So the majority, 4 out of every 5 violent offences of white crime was against their own colour. Black violent offenders, the highest, was also against their own colour, of 40.9%. Next was against Hispanics, 38.6%, and whites was 14.5%. Hispanic violent crime was 50.7% against whites, 40% against Hispanics, and 4.7% against blacks. Now, the conclusion from this is only the Hispanics attacked another colour more than their own. Both black and white people attacked their own people more than the other two. Although black on Hispanic was only 2.3% below their own colour. Now the highest rate of all the categories was white on white, 82.4%, which goes completely against the narrative being put out by the Portal people and paid crying actors on the news channels, does it not? All violent crime is unnecessary and serves no purpose whatsoever. But I did this piece so people can see the media are spinning a narrative that bears little resemblance to the facts. Particularly given there was an attack on Hispanics and the El Paso narrative in August. Black and whites combined figures of violence against Hispanics is 22.3%. Combined. And yet Hispanic figures for attacks on blacks and whites total 55.4%. Over double. And yet the media was running stories that the Hispanic people were terrified of white people. Figures tell you different. Then we did an update on the 39 species that are below our feet, that they had several meetings between themselves, and old wounds and fighting amongst them are being mended, healed and dealt with. So much so they are now trading with each other and setting up meetings of how all can help each other with their daily needs, be it food, technology or general help. From our perspective and mine, it is wonderful to hear an example of how things can be overcome with a bit of effort, flexibility and a willingness to fix things, no matter what the odds were against it. Then there was a couple of pondering lines on lots of talk of healing machines again and healing beds. Clown operator Jared Rand on the internet. And also people asking for replicators. And I asked people, do you realise most machines are replicators already? The healing machines are replicators. And you want to know what they are replicating? You. Something else to ponder for all those concerned over 5G. We have a raft of 5G and we're all going to die. If you're concerned over 5G, Have you all got rid of your mobile phones yet? If not, why? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, born to, was treated for a tumour on her pancreas, according to a court spokesman. Justice Ginsburg has tolerated treatment well, and a tumour was treated definitively, according to the court spokesman. She then undertook 3 weeks of chemo, which ended on Monday in August. And on the very same day, she was wheeled out to the public. All sounds very Weekend at Bernie's to me. Then we had a Fed meeting in Jackson Hike, Wyoming, and a G7. Following much debate and discussions within those meetings, the only thing we garnered from it so far is the Fed was pushing fresh air tokens, crypto, and that no G7 leader was buying it. That continues, by the way. And the questions again, we asked again of the crypto and Bitcoin people, do you still think you are getting around the system with both the Fed and the IMF, not to mention Facebook, pushing it? And also several rogue alt media as well. Then the Asians came in with a deal, except yet again they pulled the same stunt as they had done previously, with fake gold, and again no one was buying it. Contradictory statements. There was a lot of contradictions. Contradicting my contradictions. Let's drink that. Well, wasn't that fantastic last week? I know some didn't like it, but some have had a humour bypass, I think. But it's the contradictory statements of we the people that I wanted to focus on. And I said it's not a criticism or designed to pick faults or make you feel bad, but general observations of where we can look at things differently. Banks are stealing from us, people say, yet people still bank at Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America, Morgan Chase, JP Morgan, Santander, Barclays, Lloyds, Royal Bank of Scotland, RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, and HSBC. 5G frequencies are destroying us, people complain, and yet people still have mobile phones and microwaves. They are killing us with pharmaceuticals, yet people still buy and take their drugs. They are destroying our plants with GMO, yet people still buy them. We need organic food, yet only the few buy them. Amazon are destroying businesses, yet people still purchase from them. Walmart are destroying businesses and encourage low pay, yet people still buy from there. Governments are destroying us, yet people still vote for them. Charities are cabal and taking loads of funds and it's not going to the causes, yet people still send them money. The courts are corrupt and against us, yet people still go into the same courts to argue against their system. Vaccines are bad for our children, yet people still agree to them being vaccinated. Schools are teaching children rubbish, yet people still send them to school. The mainstream media is rubbish and fake news, yet people still watch it. Hollywood is full of pedos, yet people still watch their movies. Disney is full of pedos, yet people still buy their merchandise and attend their parks. There is no such thing as zombies, yet billions want a man to return from the dead to save them. Everyone asks, where is the plan? But don't give you a plan. The chemtrails are killing us, yet people still go outside in nature every day. Our water has been poisoned, yet people still drink it without filtering every day. People ask for change, yet stay in bad relationships, jobs, towns and cities they don't like. People ask for sovereignty, yet won't be sovereign. The IRS is stealing our taxes, yet people still pay taxes. Black lives matter, and yet the highest violence rate is black on black. People say they love all people, and then complain about immigrants. People complain about plastic, and then Americans alone purchase 42.6 billion 1-litre bottles per year. People love cats so much, yet why is it 3.4 million cats are thrown in shelters each year, of which 80% of them are treatable, of which 1.4 million a year are euthanized? Poor kitties. These are just a few examples we could all look at and change our ways. But whilst we're on a contradictory theme, let's have a listen to this. You will all remember this classic piece of entertainment in late August, designed by Kingdom of Mana game players, Soul Tribe Sanctuary leaders, and the Copy and Paste crew. Said to be the final proof that I am a rogue and a scammer, but it all spectacularly backfired, to much amusement from our members. Here is a reminder.
Q&A session was great because all of the questions from the chats were asked and answered. What I've been saying to the Aussie group when we were all together was that I wanted answers. And I wanted to know why everything was such a secret. And if he's so busy and Kim's so busy, tell us why.
So I answered all the questions and I gave all the answers. And then it was such a secret. So please explain this in part 3. And know the opening of this part is not a copy and paste glitch or a Norman Collier sketch.
What's happening? What's progressing? What can we do? Nothing. Sorry, that's operational. I could say a lot more about what I do know, but I won't. And it's not a secret, but it's just not worth wasting my energy on.
I can't say any more, but it's not a secret. So if I don't reveal plans, it is a secret. But she doesn't reveal things, it's not a secret. Getting confused yet? You should. Perhaps I don't reveal certain things to certain people because I don't want to waste my energy on people who do nothing, get nothing, and fail to understand anything presented. Touché. A quick reminder of her first statement again.
Q&A session was great because all of the questions from the chats were asked and answered.
Oops. As we always say, time reveals itself, and it did, spectacularly. And a future email from Jennifer kind of left Kaz out on a limb, whilst merrily hid in the background to that piece. Kaz, another one riddled with envy, another one who is contradictory, another one who failed with fake allegations and made herself look stupid, and another one who failed to bring down the Tiny Man or the Tiny Show. We'll be back shortly with September.
What's happening? What's progressing? What can we do? Nothing. Sorry, that's operational. I could say a lot more about what I do know, but I won't. And it's not a secret, but it's just not worth wasting my energy on.
Oh dear. That tickles me, though. Well, we're into September. And the clowns obviously get some script from that lady in that last piece. And they were telling people now that they have a new quantum financial system again. And that it was being spoon-fed across many alt media outlets. And what we put out was those that are pushing that are rogue agency or faction-based groups. All of them have had plenty of time to see through the illusion by now. And at this point, those that are pushing this QFS are rogue. Their fake QFS is now being moved to Reno, the land of where the RV or all happens, or not. And presumably in readiness for the fake RV, and the clowns in readiness for their latest attempt to pull off the RV tried to register Kim to their fake QFS from Switzerland, Hong Kong and Germany on the first Sunday in September. Think about that for a second. This is the same Kim who is the ultimate badass woman who is blocking everything from the RV to Nasara and Jessara to Anna von Wright being the new planetary leader, as she announced, appointed by God. A living God, I think she said. Oh dear. I think she takes the same pills as Kaz. And Kim is blocking it all, they say. But why would they want to register Kim on their alleged QFS? Quite simply, they don't have one. Only an old, outdated system, and trying to register Kim to then hack into the real system. It failed. The minions and certain families were ordered in September to work with the trust, and currently they're not listening. They called us for a budget, but the bank said that they will not take money from the Treasury if it comes from the trust. So when the deep state in America found out that Kim is funding the budget, they went into panic mode again. This coming moon cycle in September on the harvest moon evening, and remember all these clowns, Hebrews and cult of Ra operate on a moon cycle, meetings, rituals and sacrifices. Now the harvest moon is their sacrifice several virgins killing ceremony, followed by a plethora of contracts which goes to the minions for this year's plan. Except it turned out there is no plan, there was no contracts, there was no payments, and the natives got restless. Following the end of their meeting, they were all instructed there will be no new Pindar. Oh my. I wonder which show told them all that earlier in the year. And they are telling everyone that that position will remain vacant until one of them succeeds at the RV, which means there will be no Pindars ever again. Their world is collapsing in on them, running around chasing their own tails like a hamster on the wheel. Now, there was a discussion on MeWe over a weekend in September, and some were complaining that Kim shouldn't give money to the government. And the other one was, just let the banks collapse. So what are the potentials of a banking collapse? Well, the worst thing is they can all call in all debt, which is payable immediately, including your mortgage, knowing full well that the people can't pay, and then they acquire a larger asset base to balance their books. One member said they can't do that, and my reply is they've already taken hundreds of thousands of homes over the last 2 decades. And what did the people do? Did we blockade foreclosed homes, protect the community? No, we just gave the keys back and didn't even ask for their deposits back. That is something the so-called militia should have been doing in every town and city, in my opinion, blocking foreclosure bailiffs at the door, which they have the right to do. In America in 1933, it outlawed withholding gold and silver, and yet the people just handed it over. And the question was raised, what if they outlaw owning homes? Notwithstanding the fact that all home owners are only tenants. As unpalatable as they are, these are the facts. Like in 1933, they could just turn around and say, it's to save the country. The banks need all the assets or we're bankrupt. And the people, like 1933, would largely go along with it. We would all like to think different, but history to date shows it wouldn't be. But you don't have to go back to 1933 either. What about the 2008-2009? People in general went along with the bank bailouts. A decade ago, the Fed sent $15 trillion of American people's money to UK banks. And yet no more than 2 or 3 alt media outlets have ever covered it in any sort of detail. Another example in this country of them banning something most would think was impossible, but they did, was alcohol and prohibition. They have banned smoking in various locations in our own lifetime also. So the pretext is all there. They also banned collecting rainwater and made it a jailing offence. So let's stop saying and thinking they won't do this or that. They already have in many cases, and it all depends on the people's compliance. So far the people have complied with every request. That is why we have to change. India's attempt to land a robotic spacecraft near the moon's south pole in September appeared to end in failure. The initial parts of the descent went smoothly, but less than 2 miles above the surface, the trajectory diverged from the planned path. The mission control room fell silent as communications from the lander were lost, and a member of the staff was seen patting the back of K. Sivan, the director of India's space program, and he later announced that the spacecraft was operating as expected until an altitude of 2.1 kilometers or 1.3 miles. The data is being analysed. All I can say is, oops. Just like the rogue Israeli one last time, it went kaboom. Lots of discussions this week on levels far beyond scope and understanding of most people on this planet, whereby decisions are made for the benefit and collective of all, not just humans. Sobering, exciting and frustrating in equal measure, the discourse that took place. Brutal truth also, that despite defending humanity, I for one do not and will not overlook our issues or responsibilities, and neither does Kim. Certain negotiations have been held back to wait for humanity to get its act together, and their impatience with us is wearing thin, and I for one can't say I blame them. Following certain discussions that involved several, they are allowing us a bit more time to sort things out, and no, I will not be revealing the timeline, so people can just sit back and take their time and put things off until the last minute again, either. Act now or suffer the consequences. If you are acting in the right manner, you need no adjustments, just keep on rolling. If you are not, change it. It's that simple. Otherwise, they will go ahead with certain things and do things without us that will have major implications for our future and development. They have been watching us closely since 2012, more so since August 2016. Far more closely than many of you think or suspect. And they have ventured out into our communities in record numbers for those who can see. They see the social media, they see the threats, violence and stupidity, and they see the incessant behaviour of humans more intent on destroying than creating. And their observations led them to a conclusion, and this is their opinion. Quote, "We do not consider you as a whole an unintelligent life form." Or we do consider you as a whole an unintelligent life form, with a few intelligent ones amongst you. And we have observed the fact that when the few bright stars amongst you show up, they are murdered, slandered, or stifled by your own kind. Unquote. And you know what hurts me, Kim and others, is that statement is 100% correct. If you don't believe that statement to be correct, listen to or listen again to last Saturday's show. It was all there in a nutshell. That was the show we did the Kaz thing and the copy and paste and alt media clowns. They also recognised via this statement, quote, "We also understand delays is mostly coming from the same group of their spawn, and that they are no longer listening to their masters either. Steps to correct that are underway. They are not only holding humanity up, but several other groups. Talk is over, actions must be and will be taken." What was also recognised is we have made more advancements in the past 5 years than any other time in history in terms of knowledge, understanding, compassion, taking responsibility and actions conducive to development and a more adult-like species. It is that has brought us some leeway. But more must improve in the right manner, and at this point, you should not need me to tell you how to do that. The IMF closed all banks in Belize in September. Military came in with guns and escorted all employees out of the bank after interviews and fingerprints. Was told that the bank took money from all account holders. Any account holder had to have a minimum of $2,000 in their account. And one of the friends of our members said she lost her money as well as some of her friends, and some of it was in 5 figures. Is this how the deep state is going to keep going across the world? Time will tell. The UK were running fear campaigns by the police and the Red Cross in September, who are associated with rogue Mason and Templar groups, I might add, and are telling people to have a bug-out bag in preparedness, but don't state what they are preparing for. And in the illustration of the bag, it included a pen and notepad, a phone charger and a battery pack, flashlight, radio, first aid, batteries, whistle, personal toiletries, seasonal clothing, food and water, and an emergency plan. How can you have an emergency plan if you don't know what the emergency is? The Draco Queen has made apologies on behalf of her family to the others and told them destroying this planet is not an option and that they need to work towards restoration of it, not destruction under the old M plan, and asked all, including our group, to come up with a plan. Then we had the Saudi Arabia oil incident. If you remember last night, we were talking about Aramco and Iran and Saudi Arabia, Netanyahu and Kings all making deals with the Bushes et al. Well, there was I don't know whether it was a bomb went off or something went off anyway. A missile hit the Saudi Arabia oil, which could have been done by several groups, and regardless of who did it, you would have to say it was justified when you really know what is and has been going on in that region. Rogue elements have been dividing up Iraqi oil for free. Most of China's imported oil comes from this region, and their total cost of the oil is just shipping costs only. They're not paying for the oil. As well as China getting free oil, there are others who are getting a cut out of this deal. Benjamin Netanyahu for one, Bush Group, no surprise there, Obama failed Pindar man, and also the Ayatollah Khamenei of Iran are all in on the deal of the free oil. The oil extracted has to be processed, and that was all done by one company. Who? Aramco in Saudi Arabia, the one that was being attacked, before being shipped to China and Houston, Texas. Like I said, regardless of who did it, whether it's Iraq, Yemen, some sub-religious group from anywhere in that region, or even Iran, which was predictably blamed by the Portal people, you cannot blame them. Because what they're doing is they're stifling and controlling the whole regional market with this heist. If you were Iraq, Iran, Yemen or Qatar or any other oil producing or selling nation in that region, and your whole business and trade is being stifled by these highway robber barons, wouldn't you fight back and then hit them where it hurts? And the whole gist of why is the US is imposing sanctions of Iran is so they Iran can't sell their oil. And the above named keep and sell their stolen loot deal. That's the gist of it. And the key to ending all of this is for the world to share out all the resources equally. But to do that, we have to get rid of the minions of the old order controlling all businesses, particularly in the field of energy. The clowns in early September were in meetings for 11 or more days to come up with a plan. Now, our plan was fairly easy, but theirs has become very complex. And the gist of it is, how can we come up with a plan that appears to help the planet and the people whilst we remain in control of it? And no doubt they have ran several AI scenarios, and to date not one of their plans will keep them in control. This is why they have no plan. Our plan was accepted by 99% on the Galactic Council, and surprisingly, and is a massive shift if fully confirmed, and it was, that the Hidden World Council we referenced a few months back voted 4-3 in favour and support of our plan presented. That plan is not yet set in stone and will be adjusted accordingly here and there when more input is placed into it. But that 4-3 vote is a major shift, as all of them were old order minions. That vote 2 years ago would have been 0-7 against us. And what it tells you is the work we have done has rendered them in essence obsolete. An extraordinary achievement given the lack of numbers and resources of those involved in that exercise. The Emperor has no clothes, no ideas, and no plans. Wrong timeline and frequency, folks, and you can keep denying it all you like, but reality bites. Predictably, their only response in the first few weeks of September to fix that problem was to take Kim and I out altogether. And we gave them a message for those of you attempting to do that, and named them in a roundabout way. Yes, you, the Cult of Ra pedo group out of Utah. We don't give a shit what you threaten us with, but if you think taking 2 people out of 7 billion plus will work, good luck with that. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.
Who the hell are you?
And don't lie to me.
I don't lie. I don't lie. My name is Madeline Jackson. I'm a journalist. Used to be, till I saw the light. That trying to speak the truth is a waste of time because nobody wants the truth. People don't want the truth. God forbid it would all go down in flames. It's the lies that keep the construct going, don't you see? Spread by the vested interests in the government and the private sector and the churches and the stock exchanges, all fabricating and spinning and telling stories that keep 300 million consumers happy and stupid and spending. Why are you looking at me like I'm crazy? Just stop. I'm not the deluded one. You are.